Good morning, all. Your Excellencies, honorable members, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen here present. Good morning and welcome to our Zimbabwe trade webinar hosted by the Zimbabwe Australian Business Council in partnership with the Australia Zimbabwe Business Council, Australia Africa Chamber of Commerce, Austrade, the Investment Commission, and Zimtrade. My name is Karen Yenga, the licensee of Fine and Country Real Estate in Zimbabwe, and I'm here in my capacity as the Secretary of the ZABC. Today, we have an esteemed panel of speakers presenting on various opportunities that are available between our shores and borders of Zimbabwe and Australia. And we believe that this webinar will be impactful for all who are taking a part today. I really hope that by the end of this seminar, not only would you be empowered and also informed about what's available in Zimbabwe, the channels that you actually have at your fingertips to access all of these various opportunities. You'll be able, if you're in Zimbabwe, to contact the ZABC to become a member, and you're over in Australia, to be in communication with the Australian Zimbabwe Business Council. And from there, we'll be able to facilitate better trade relations. I'm about to hand over through to our moderator today, and I'm going to introduce you to Ms. Nelly Tiago, who's a senior partner at Scanlon and Holderness Legal Practitioners here in Zimbabwe. She'll be your moderator for the rest of the program. I'm going to take this time to ask that anybody who has their mic on, just to mute it. The mic will be unmuted only for the panelists up until we have reached the question and answer segment. Would like to ensure that this whole webinar is going to go through smoothly. So please, can you just turn up your volumes? If there's any questions, raise your hands. And then if there are other questions, can you please just put them through on the chat segment of the webinar? Thank you so much. I'm now handing over through to Ms. Nelly Tiago.
Well, good morning to those in Zimbabwe and good evening to those in Australia. I'm sure I find you all in good health and excited about our webinar for today, the very first ZABC webinar. We have a very packed program with massive, diverse input that we're going to be receiving from the different sectors that are primarily involved in investment in Zimbabwe. We shall hear from the embassy. We've also got Austrade represented here by Mr. Scott Morris. We have Zimtrade, ZIDA, that's the Zimbabwe Investment Development Authority represented. We will also be hearing from the exchange control authorities, a very important aspect of when a person comes into Zimbabwe to invest, ensuring that they've followed the right channels. An overview of the Chamber of Commerce activities will be presented to us by Mr. Duncan Harris of Australia Africa Chamber of Commerce. Around halfway, we will also have presentations from case studies of the successful investments that have been done in Zimbabwe, just a few in the agriculture space. You all know that there's been so many: mining, tourism, agriculture, even arts and culture. Then we shall hear from ZTA on investment opportunities in tourism in Zimbabwe. Our geographies in Zimbabwe and Australia are so similar. So you'll be keen to know what we have in Zimbabwe when it comes to investment opportunities in that sector. At the end, we'll also have an overview from the Australia Zimbabwe Business Council, and we'll close with our closing remarks from Caroline, who is our chairperson. I just thought I should give you a rundown of what exciting information we're going to be receiving today. I'm sure everyone's knowledge is going to be enhanced by what's in store for today. So without further delay, because of how packed our program is, I'm going to hand over to Scott Morris, who shall be speaking on behalf of the embassy. And I think he might as well continue and present on an introduction to Austrade. Hi, Scott. Good to see you. Which country are you in today?
Hi, Nelly, and thanks, Carolyn, too. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm in Nairobi, Kenya, where I've moved my office at the beginning of this year. So I'm coming to you from East Africa, but doesn't mean that my heart hasn't been left behind in Southern Africa, and certainly keen to see Zimbabwe thrive with more trade and investment going both ways between Australia and Zimbabwe. Please allow me at the beginning of my presentation to pass on the regards and remarks of our Ambassador, Her Excellency Manoli Pereira, who unfortunately couldn't join us today, but I'll pass on her verbatim remarks to you now. On behalf of the Australian Embassy, I extend my appreciation to the Zimbabwe Australia Business Council for organising today's event and to all of the speakers. We trust this will be a useful platform to hear about the opportunities that exist to further the Australia and Zimbabwe trade relationship. Australia and Zimbabwe have strong people-to-people links, and the diaspora in Australia is some 40,000 people. We know the diaspora continues to make a significant contribution to Zimbabwe's economy, be it through remittances or through business and investment activities. And we know diaspora are often integral to the success of Australian businesses operating in Zimbabwe, given their deep contextual knowledge of both countries. The establishment of this webinar, along with a recent Australian business delegation attending the Zimbabwe International Trade Fair last month, highlights a growing interest in strengthening trade ties. This is a positive step in the right direction. Australia and Zimbabwe are both nations founded on agriculture and mining, and our companies have a lot to learn from each other. Traditionally, these are the sectors that have attracted investment, but we also want to see the economic relationship expand to new areas of engagement. And that concludes the remarks from Her Excellency, our Ambassador to Zimbabwe, Pereira. So now I would like to begin talking to you about what it is I do and my team do here in Africa for Austrade. I'll just share our presentation. Hopefully this works. Okay. Basically, Austrade is the Australian government's trade and investment promotion organisation. We're very similar to many trade and investment promotion organisations in other governments around the world, and we have a very similar aim and mandate. If you boil down what we do in very simple terms, it's there on the slide. We help Australian exporters, companies, find new markets and opportunities overseas and export. We boost the visitor and student economy. So a lot of my time is spent attracting students to Australia or trying to attract Australian universities and other educational institutions to offshore overseas and deliver Australian education and content overseas. We also
So sorry to interject. I'm not sure if everyone can see your presentation because
really?
I can't. Yes.
I can't.
Okay. It says it's working at the moment from my end, but
Right.
would you have the slides that I sent through earlier? Would anyone have them there?
Sure, Karen can assist there. But please go ahead and just speak to your slides while Karen sorts us out. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, I'll try again once more just for a second.
It's all right. And that's the Nairobi network. You should have stayed in Southern Africa. There we go. All done. All sorted.
Is that
perfect? Yes. Thank
everyone
you.
see the slides now? Excellent.
Yes.
Okay, and so just to return, hopefully the slide showing is an introduction to Austrade and what we do, with 3 points on there. So I was last at the boosting the visitor economy, which means attracting tourists and ensuring that the tourists that come to Australia have a fantastic experience, and also attracting international students. We also are responsible for attracting international investment, just as you'll hear from many speakers from the Zimbabwe government today, whose job it is in the reverse, attract investment to here, to Zimbabwe, sorry. Right. Hopefully. I'm having a bit of a slow problem with the network connection, but anyway, I'll continue on. we have we're a government agency with global commercial networks. We have almost 70 offices in 47 countries around the world, 1,100 employees roughly, and a large global network of trade and investment experts. Basically, as you heard before, we connect Australian businesses to the world and the world to Australian businesses. That's essentially our primary IP, is our network of experienced international, what we call business development managers in all of our offices overseas. When anyone engages with Austrade from Australia or overseas, it's these offices that are the front line in trying to help and promote trade with the world. They're our key assets, essentially. Right, can I just ask if my slides are still being
Yes.
shown?
Yes, we're
Yes.
still on the first page, the introduction. It's showing
Okay.
slide number 1. Yeah. I think you can play to the
Um,
next one. Yeah, perfect.
is
It's working now.
Yep.
Mhm.
Excellent. Okay. So that was the slide that I was just talking to. Essentially, we're global, and
Mhm.
our key asset is our the fact that we're positioned globally, and also the experience of our trade BDMs. I would say that we do have a small investment role in Africa, but most of our job, day in day out, is trying to promote Australian trade with Africa, namely exports. That's a picture, hopefully that's showing up now. That's a picture of where we're located overseas. As you can see, we're right around the world. Unfortunately, it's a little bit out of date. We no longer have an office in Johannesburg, and we do have an office in Accra, sorry, in Rabat, Morocco. But that also reflects the fact that we often change our global presence depending on both our government budget, government provided budget, and also the priorities and where Australian companies are going around the world. So as that waxes and wanes through time, the Austrade presence also waxes and wanes. Our motto is to help clients go further and faster. How we do it, we give businesses the confidence to go global. Often a lot of Australian companies come up with a great product, service, or idea they wish to promote overseas after achieving success in Australia. Some of them may not have, may have an idea of where they'd like to go, but don't have a lot of knowledge or background in that particular market overseas or region. So our job is to help give them comfort, a sense of comfort and confidence in approaching a foreign market overseas to help them grow or establish and grow their export businesses. Typically, that means us reducing the risk for them, sometimes influencing policies of host governments, hopefully in mutually beneficial favour of both the host nation and also Australian exporters. We do provide some financial assistance to our exporters as well through what's called the Export Market Development Grant. That's a program that's been running for a long time. And but generally, if you were to boil down what we do day in, day out, it's make connections. We find Australians partners in a local market to help them take their first steps in trading overseas. So what is it we do specifically in Africa? Well, this is us. The African team belongs to the broader Middle East and Africa region in terms of the way Austrade is divided up the world. As you can see on the slide there, that's exactly where we have our offices. And probably the first thing you'll notice is that it's quite a small presence given the very large geographic remit. Unfortunately, that reflects where priorities and companies are going. I hope one day to redress that and hopefully expand our presence in Africa, but that perhaps will take time. Our vision, as is said on the slide, is essentially about building what I call literacy. So a first step in increasing trade and engagement with any other country overseas or region or markets is helping Australians understand that region of the world better and helping that region of the world understand Australia better as well. Often it comes up that when we have friction points in trade or we have companies that are perhaps not doing as well as they might with a customer in Africa. Often the issues boil down to perhaps a misunderstanding of where each side is coming from, and that I put down to literacy. Not literacy literally, like in reading and writing, but literacy in terms of the deeper understanding and insight into a foreign culture and way of doing business that you might not have encountered before. So a lot of my key job I see is building that Australian literacy of Africa, and likewise building Africa's literacy of Australia. Our key priorities there are listed on the slide. We're a government agency, so of course we have to deliver on government priorities, and these center on what we call diversification, meaning making sure that our companies don't have too many eggs in one basket or one market overseas. Net zero, obviously decarbonisation of industry, carbon-heavy industries around the world and in Australia. We have First Nations. We prioritise helping our First Nations grow businesses and exports overseas and attract investment. And of course, what we call economic security. In other words, building Australia's manufacturing capacity, economic security more broadly. And then the other three priorities, as you can see, are listed on the slide. Where we are in Africa, specifically, there's myself and Juliet Kanyi, based in Nairobi. We have Osama Alawi, based in Rabat, Morocco, and we have John, based in Ghana. A very, very small team across a very large continent. But I can tell you that we've got probably about 30 to 40 years of experience collectively. And certainly we love what we do. We love helping Australian companies get into Africa. We love helping African companies and the business sector find opportunities and find solutions to problems they may have that the Australian business community might be able to solve. Once again, what we do, connections and knowledge. Long-term experienced staff with good connections into industry, government, business chambers, etc., just like I'm doing today. We hopefully understand the African business context and culture, and we have also a lot of access to different sources of market intelligence to provide to Australia to allow them to understand better Africa and also the opportunities here. Obviously, this webinar itself is one of those efforts. Promotion, we continually and jointly with others host and participate in events, webinars, meetings, face-to-face events to increase Africa's awareness of Australia and increase Australia's awareness of Africa. Typically, although I haven't been able to do this for budget reasons for a couple of years, I at least go home once a year to Africa Down Under and on a what we call a roadshow program around Australia, along in partnership with such important partners as the Australian African Chamber of Commerce, and promote Africa as a business destination. So we work very closely with partners such as the AACC and the ZABC in doing that. And finally, badge of government. This is essential when you might have a business facing a hurdle or a challenge. It might be down at a dock, trying to sort of classify products that are coming in, or it could be resolving an issue with registration of a product to do business in Africa. We leverage our fact that I'm a diplomat and we work for the Australian government to open some doors and try and solve problems on behalf of business to make everything go more smoothly. In order to do that, we need good regular dialogue with anyone and everyone that's active in Australia, that's from Australia, and to be aware of their problems. I must say also that we don't get involved in commercial disputes. That's not our role or mandate. But where there is a role for us is in simply increasing understanding and hopefully smoothing any hurdles that might have been encountered. I couldn't do a presentation about Australia with highlighting what the great stuff about, or the great things about Australia that many will encounter when they go over there. Obviously, we're very proud of our natural landscape. We're proud of our beaches, our native flora and fauna, and cute koalas and kangaroos, and our sports as well. I know that Zimbabweans like their sport, so does Australia. So if you have a desire to see some top rugby, cricket, and other sports, or any tennis and so on, Australia is a great place to go. And I'd also like to sort of highlight too, perhaps a little known fact about how Australia has influenced a lot of daily things we take for granted around the world today. And we lead with a point about Australia basically helping 1 billion people around the globe that rely on, perhaps unknowingly, on Australian discoveries in innovations. This includes flying safely, the flight data recorder, or the black box. We have Cochlear with the bionic ear that was invented in Australia. Wi-Fi, CSIRO work certainly solved a lot of challenges in developing and delivering Wi-Fi to the world. And as you may not know, I didn't know until recently, Google Maps was originally an Australian company sold to Google, I think in 2004. So if you use Google Maps to get anywhere around the planet, please let me tell you that you're using an Australian invention. And finally, I've pitched for obviously studying in Australia. If you're a Zimbabwean and you're looking to go overseas to study, these are a few of the reasons why international students go and study in Australia. We do have a bit of a challenge at the moment in terms of reducing the intake from overseas of students overall. This is a temporary effort to bring in immigration. The overall effort for us in Australia at the moment is to try and improve the quality and sustainability of our international education system. So please, while there might be a little bit of negative media around at the moment about the drop-off in approvals for international students, please bear with us. We're working through it, and the aim is to improve the quality of the Australian international education system so that the experience is so much better. And in very broad terms, these are the reasons why you should come and study in Australia. And that's it from me. Thank you very much for your time. I hope we haven't gotten too much over time. And I wish you all a very successful webinar today. And if you have any questions, or if you're an Australian company and you need help, or a Zimbabwean company looking for a solution, please come and get on the phone to us or email me. Thank you.
Well, I'm not going to let you run off so quickly, Scott. You know me, being the lawyer, I do have follow-up questions. It's time to cross-examine you.
Sure.
What are the challenges that you have been facing with, especially in this side of Africa, the southern part, dealing with the Zimbabwean or Southern African investors, and managing the relationships with our Australian counterparts? And what have you seen as challenges that we can work to have reformed, or lobby for change, so that we make the investment environment more conducive?
Thank you. I must point out at the beginning, my role is not to really facilitate investment into Zimbabwe. Certainly, I have an interest in that, where Australian companies are bringing their know-how and expertise and investing in setting up a business in Zimbabwe. We obviously like to see more Australian companies succeed in doing business in Zimbabwe, and we'll connect them to the right places to do that. But in terms of things that typically come up from most Australian companies that are looking at doing more business in Zimbabwe, it's around profit repatriation. So there are people are generally aware of forex controls and a few difficulties with regard to hard currency in Zimbabwe. So finding out how to navigate currency controls, profit repatriation, local content requirements as well in Zimbabwe. Most governments in Africa have a local content requirement to ensure that local businesses thrive as well when a foreign government or foreign company, makes an investment into Zimbabwe. So understanding the goalposts that the Zimbabwe government establishes for foreign business and activity when they enter Zimbabwe, repatriating profit when they make a profit, having some surety of advice about that and the process by which to do it. And also, I think in other terms, having a good knowledge of the local business landscape and culture, the business cultural landscape as well, comes up often. Generally, most of the companies I've come across so far have come into Zimbabwe via some sort of personal family connection. So they've got a friend, or they've met a Zimbabwean expatriate in Australia, and so they have some sort of good grounding, but their knowledge might be a bit dated. So knowing where to go to basically get access current information is a really handy thing. But no, I certainly can test, if I can say a personal comment, although I'm unfortunately yet to travel to Harare, I'm looking forward to doing so when my boss allows me to. And I can say that I've met a lot of Zimbabweans, not only here in Africa, but also in Australia. And you guys are going to are very impressive hustlers and entrepreneurs, and hard workers as well. So I can say you've got all assets of favour that are going to make a very attractive destination to do business in. And I wish you well. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I have one more question, which is if you're able to answer this one, do you have any specific initiatives or programs that you're doing in support of Australian businesses looking to expand into Zimbabwe? And how can Zimbabwean businesses take advantage of these opportunities?
Sure, thank you. Look, there are, I won't lie, we do have a very constrained budget environment at the moment, which limits in terms of resources, both financially and also personnel, as you saw on the slide, what we can do. However, that does mean we work more closely with partners such as ZABC and the AACC to expand what we can do. In terms of specific initiatives, we've recently, education is a big part of my job because we have so many African students come to Australia. I know that we have quite a good core from Zimbabwe as well. And so we've just really started a regular African education mission that we kicked off this year just to West and East Africa this time. But in future, we'd like to also expand the mission to Southern Africa. And I think Zimbabwe would be an important destination to visit as part of any future education mission. So that'll be one. And if we're doing that, we would probably try and use the opportunity to expand, not only to talk about education, but industry to industry engagement. There are plenty of opportunities for Australian capability in mining, as you pointed out in the opening, or as, sorry, Her Excellency Ambassador Pereira said in her remarks, mining is a central part of our economies to both Zimbabwe and Australia. A lot of the challenges miners might face in Zimbabwe have been also met by Australian companies. So we hope there's a good exchange of knowledge, expertise, and commercial exchange as well, based around those solutions that we've developed. So in future, my hope is when I get a few more resources in terms of personnel to conduct a good survey of the mining community across Africa, and to find out gaps, weaknesses, strengths, and so on, so that I can hopefully then build that into a mission, a specific mission to Africa to talk about and introduce capabilities and technologies that Australians have been working on that Africans might not be aware of yet, to help solve problems and challenges here as well. So does that answer your question hopefully sufficiently?
Yes, yes, it does. Yes, it does. There's quite a lot that we're able to exchange as nations. And thank you so much for always being present to assist us as the ZABC. And there's so much that happens in the background that people don't know, but we're so grateful for you and how you've assisted us to grow in this way.
My pleasure.
Right.
No, it's good to be involved.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm taking note of the questions, and I'm sure we'll have something that we'll put up on our website to respond to the main issues that we can respond to, like your repatriation issues, local content, just brief answers to the Q&A for the benefit of those that have attended, and even for anyone looking to come into Zim to invest. So thank you so much. Right. Thank you. So that was Scott giving us a background of what Austrade is all about and the relationship between Africa, even Zimbabwe, and Australia through the lens of Austrade. Thank you, Scott, for all the work that you've been doing in the background, like I said before. This takes me to our next speaker, who I believe is Alan Mujuru from Zimtrade. Did he manage to log on, Karen?
Alan is going to be replaced and represented by Jackie Nyat.
Hi, Jackie. Good to have you today.
Hi, good morning.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you keeping? It's evening to you, right?
So I'll just use Jackie for now. That's our home name. So let me use
Jackie.
Good. Thank you for taking time out to speak to us today. And you are going to give us, insights into trade opportunities in Zimbabwe. As well, give us a brief background of who Zimtrade is, especially for those new today on this panel, on this channel. Let me call it that. Yeah.
All right, now thank you so much. I'm sure I'll do justice to that. Good morning to everyone. I hope you can see my screen roundabout now.
Yep. Good.
Has it come
Yes,
up?
it's come up.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So my name is Jackie Nyati, and I'm with the Zimtrade team as the manager for the Southern Region office. This is the office that covers 4 provinces, Matabeleland North, Matabeleland South, Bulawayo, as well as the Midlands. And for today's event, I will be representing Alan Machuru, our CEO, and I'll take you through a presentation that we have prepared to just give you a highlight on what Zimbabwe has to offer, where we believe there are opportunities that people here present can tap into. And I will also, of course, share on the brief on who we are as Zimtrade and how Zimbabwe's trade performance is currently looking like, and where we aspire to be as a nation. In terms of Zimbabwe, as just in brief, I'm sure everyone knows that we are a land-linked, not landlocked country, and we're strategically positioned within Southern Africa, linking, countries like Botswana, South Africa, to Mozambique, to Zambia, to the DRC. So we are actually, positioned right where it matters, the heartbeat of the Southern African region. And we believe because of this location, we are actually the gateway to the trade and business within the region. And why we believe, we are a blessed nation. We have quite a diverse, export sector. What we have to offer the global market is quite vast. From our natural resources, we also have a thriving horticultural sector. And we're seeing more and more people actually taking interest in growing what we say are our low-hanging fruits, trying to see what we can get from the land and develop for exports. And this as well also contributes to our value-added exports, our processed foods, our engineering sectors. And we are a country that is endowed with a great human resource, a hardworking people who have a progressive ethos and are keen to see the country thriving, and they will put everything that they can to achieve this. And as an organization, we were established in 91 as the country's trade promotion organization. And our mandate really is to just grow Zimbabwe's exports. So when we're talking about exports from Zimbabwe, everyone will look to Zimtrade for that guidance on what they can export, which markets they can explore. And it is such platforms that we actually then make use of to actually share with our clients on what opportunities are there and in which markets. And I am excited that today the focus is on Australia, because we believe this is one market that we can actually diversify into in order for us to reduce dependence on the few traditional markets that we've been focusing on, and to also explore new products that we can actually take into Australia. We have 4 key services that we hinge on. Our market intelligence, which is really about disseminating vital trade information to our clientele base. And we also appreciate that, there is that hand-holding duty that we have to ensure that companies are prepared to actually succeed in the export arena. And for that, we have our export development department, which focuses on capacitation of the emerging exporters, those that believe that, they are ready for the next step, which is to go into exports. And once we have nurtured them to a level that we believe is ideal for them to actually explore regional and international markets, we also then organize various trade promotion events, our trade fairs, our trade missions, be they outward or inward missions, just so that we then give them that exposure to what the world presents to them and give them that opportunity to actually showcase what they have to offer as companies. And lastly, in terms of our services, we have the advocacy role, because we are saying, in as much as we can do all the capacitation, all the trade promotion events that we can facilitate participation on, if we do not have the ideal environment in which these companies can thrive, it will be difficult for us to achieve our Vision 2030. of being an upper middle income economy, which is driven by value-added exports. So we do take that role of advocacy quite seriously, engaging continuously with our clients to understand their needs, to understand what challenges they're facing, and being that link between them and the relevant authorities in government who can actually take up these issues and action them. And in terms of trade performance, just to show you a trend for the past 10 years, 2013 to 2023, you will see that we've had an imbalance where our imports have been more than what we are currently exporting. But what we pride ourselves in is that we then set a target as a country to actually grow our exports, and we set the target 714 to say by 2030 we'll have achieved 14 billion in terms of our total exports. And there has been that steady growth in our exports, and in particular of the value-added products as well as horticultural produce. And we're saying we still have quite a lot of work that we need to do to grow these exports so that we can achieve this balance that we need. We accept that, you know, we can never do away with imports because it's not that we have an advantage in every sector. There is things that we would need to import: our energy, our fuels, the key raw materials that we're not able to produce as a country. But what we then believe in is that at least if we are importing things that are critical and that we can actually use for our manufacturing industry, for our mining industry, for our agri sector, then we will achieve that balance that we desire. And the charts are just to highlight a comparison between 1992, where we had a diversified export market base, as compared to 2023. So again, we're saying we need to reduce the dependence on the few markets. You'll find, for instance, our major export partner was South Africa. And we've now then seen the United Arab Emirates coming on board. We are increasing our exports to countries like the Netherlands, to China, which is what will help us achieve that balance in terms of diversifying our exports. And that's the same again with our products. We're saying in 1992, we used to export much more of value-added products, and that is where we want to go back to. And then just focusing now on how Zimbabwe's trade with Australia stands, you will note that our exports have been on a decline. In 2018, which is the year where we noted quite a significant volume of exports, we were at 1 million. But in 2023, we were at 113,000, which is quite a decline. And as we try to ascertain the reasons behind all this, we're saying what it simply means is there's quite a lot of work that we now need to do to promote trade between the two countries. And this webinar is the starting point, because it opens us up to, you know, insights on what each country has to offer, what each country demands, or what each country needs. And we get to understand how we can actually tap into the opportunities that are being noted. And in terms of the key export opportunities that we have identified as a strength that we have as Zimbabwe, we believe Australia can tap into, we are looking at meat imports. So I must confess, I always, you know, admire the Australian cattle, just the way they look. And I then happened to have a meeting with some guys from Gloucester, which is the Global South Trade Alliance. There were a delegation that came through during our ZITF, and during that meeting, I happened to then say to them, guys, you know, how do you manage to have that kind of a breed? And shockingly, they were telling us that there's actually a market for meat from Africa. Why? Because they've noted that in terms of price competitiveness, we are at an advantage. And we're like, oh, okay, then if we can tap into this opportunity, the better for us as Zimbabwe. So we are saying we have quite a head of cattle, and our agri-tax department is working to actually increase the breed, improve the breed, and increase the head count. So it's an opportunity that we are seeing, and we would, we're looking forward to seeing what this will yield for us as a country. But besides, beef, we also have goat meat, and I know studies have said it's lean meat, it's more nutritious, it's healthier. And we're saying if there's such an opportunity for us to export goat meat, it's something that we are quite excited about. And besides the agric side, on the engineering side, we have opportunities again to supply the Australian market. I know right now the country was taking much of its iron and steel from China, but again, trying to diversify your source market, Zimbabwe is an ideal ground to look at. Why? Because we are poised to become the biggest producer of iron and steel in Africa. We have the Maniza project in Vuma that is being worked on. And we believe that once they open their doors to trading in June, July, we will see quite a lot of interest in iron and steel coming out of Zimbabwe. Why? Again, because all the raw materials that Maniza needs are all in one place. So in terms of competitiveness, they will be at an advantage, and they are looking forward to actually providing quite a wide range of steel that is needed globally. And this, of course, will be produced according to international steel standards. And looking at other opportunities that we believe are a niche for us as Zimbabwe, and again, because we are saying, let's see how we can, export our heritage, get the world to know about what we stand for Zimbabwe, get the world to appreciate what our culture is all about. I know growing up, everyone knows of the baobab tree, and what the contents of that tree actually are is what we're now saying we want to export as a country. In terms of health and well-being, you'll find that we've got quite a range of heritage-based products that we are looking to export. And we are impressed with how these are already being received in some markets, and we hope to grow exports of these even as far as Australia. We're looking at our baobab, which is a superfood. We're looking at moringa, our tamarind, our marula. And during one fruit logistica exhibition in Germany, we actually had quite a lot of interest in our bambara nuts. And we're saying we have this in abundance as a country, and this linked to our rural communities. So it's every province contributing to our exports agenda. And we already have quite a number of people who are then now value adding these heritage-based natural products or indigenous products, if I must say, to produce essential oils, to produce powders that the health conscious consumer is looking for. Just a slide to show the types of oils that we're actually seeking to export: our moringa oil, our avocado oil, and we now have quite a number of guys who have gone into hemp production, and we are able to actually supply hemp oil medicinal. So that's, again, another opportunity that we have noted. But besides, just talking about exports, we also appreciate that, when it comes to trade, there is so much learning that can also happen. There is the exchange of information, the exchange of knowledge, collaborations that will grow our innovativeness as a nation. And again, from that cluster presentation, we actually had discussions around livestock production, the genetics and what, how these can improve the breeds that we currently have as a country. And I am sure that there will be engagements going forward with our universities who are into research and development around these areas. And again, we're saying in trade and services, there are opportunities for us as Zimbabwe to offer our services to Australia. Right now, there is actually quite a lot of remote working happening. And, as a country, we've got quite a lot of accounting professionals, your doctors, your engineers, who you can actually tap into their services. Some, it can actually be virtual, where you're actually having these guys offering their services right here in Zimbabwe, but the service being done efficiently in Australia. So we have identified our finance and accounting advisory services, our research and development, our agricultural services, and transport and logistics services as the subsectors that have potential. And as an organization, in keeping with the digital transformation, everything should be available online at the click of a button. We did then develop what we call the Shop at Zim, which is an online marketplace which you can actually explore to identify companies in Zimbabwe who are into exports. You get to appreciate what it is that they're exporting and what they have to offer you. And as I conclude, allow me to encourage Zim and Australia to actually, enhance these collaborations. Let us have our diaspora community, engaging closely with us, because we accept and believe that they are critical to the growth of exports of the country, and they actually provide that route to the Australian market that can guide us as a country. And I wish you success in everything. Thank you so much. Back to
Well,
you,
thank
Nelly.
you. Thank you, Jackie. I was struggling with my buttons there, but I think I'm back. And thank you for that presentation, especially the beef. I know the UK is already using one of our breeds because of the juiciness of the meat and how strong, if I can call that strong, that type of cow is. It must be the Tuli breed, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it is.
All right. I have a few questions for you. As Zimtrade, you obviously face the public, like the Zimbabwean public, and you assist them in their mission to export their goods outside of the country. Now, if I want to be part of Zimtrade as a exporter, do I pay anything? And if I'm also participating from the side of an Australian investor, is it for free? I mean, we just want to understand the dynamics of being part of Zimtrade.
All right. So in terms of membership fees, we do not have those. Why? Because our funding is through what we call the trade development surcharge. So on selected exports, there's a 0.1% that then comes to fund Zimtrade. So it's in our best interest to actually grow our exporter base so that we increase that value of TDS. But in terms of membership fees, we do not have those. But for instance, if there are specific events that a company wants to then participate in, for instance, it could be a trade fair to a particular market, we then get them to pay what we call a commitment fee, which is quite a minimal fee of $150 or $300, depending on the size of the company. This is just, to get them to commit financially to the event, because we noted in the past that you'd find some companies letting you down just a day before the event. But if someone has committed something financially, the chances of them pulling out are pretty slim.
And from the top of your mind, do you have any success story that you can share with us of someone who participated on your platform and maybe benefited? I would love this example to speak to the Australian jurisdiction. How did somebody who was part of Zimtrade or came through Zimtrade do well or, flourish and establish themselves in Australia?
All right, so for Australia, I don't have anyone that comes to mind. Why? Because again, if you recall, in my presentation, I was then saying there's quite some low in terms of trade. The volumes are pretty low, and our drive now as Zimtrade is to actually have that focus on the market. So maybe ask me that question in a year's time, and I'll give you a better answer.
All right. Yes, I'm noting that down. I'm going to make you sign this with your pen, and you better tell me
Certainly.
that there was an improvement there.
Awesome.
I had an opportunity to speak with some of your colleagues as well, and they told me and expressed to me some of the challenges that they face when it comes to pushing the Zimbabwe agenda. Maybe you can share from your side. I mean, what are the things that come to mind when you're trying to speak to another person like an Australian about investing in Zimbabwe? We already have the repatriation issue, because that was also brought up in those discussions. I don't know if there's anything else that you can, we want to lobby for change, and it helps to have this platform. So what else comes to mind to you in that regard? The challenges that are faced by people who come to Zimtrade.
All right, so I'll speak specifically with reference to those who are wanting to take their products out of Zim into the Australian market. It's about the information gap, us understanding what the regulations and requirements are for Zimbabwean products to land on the Australian market. So I'm sure with closer engagements with the embassy, with Austrade, we will be open to having more information that can guide us as Zimtrade, so that even if we are then saying, guys, we need to take some essential oils into the Australian market, our clients can understand what sort of standards they need to meet, what sort of documentation is required for their products to be acceptable on the Australian market. And again, it's also an issue of the competitiveness. In terms of quality, I believe our products are of a high quality. Most of them have that natural feel to it, which is highly organic and safe for consumption, if I may say. But it's then the pricing. I guess it's the distance from the market, which also adds to this logistical cost. So if we can somehow find solutions around the logistics, how best to get our products onto the Australian market competitively, because you are not just sourcing from Zimbabwe, it will be sourcing from so many other countries that have some advantage over and above us. So those are the two challenges that I can pick. And if we're to look at the packaging as well, it's something that as an organization, we're pretty tied up with right now to say, guys, if we are going to tap into some of these markets, the packaging that we are offering needs to be that appealing. It needs to, suit what is contained inside the package. And we have quite a number of initiatives that we've come up with, some training programs, some engagements with experts in packaging, just so that we can assist our producers and exporters on the packaging front.
That's very true. Our product is often beautiful to use, but sometimes we fall short when it comes to something that's pleasing to the eyes and that draws the market. Thank you for that. I think, on the flip side, we will also hear later on when we speak to ZIDA and maybe even the RBZ on what can be done to reduce taxation, or, for example, what benefits can be given to somebody who's exporting. Because if you can increase the profit you make by reducing our own costs or getting some kind of an incentive from our own country, then the landing price and all those issues will also balance out. So I'm going to raise that. That's coming from having considered what you said. All right. Thank you so much, Jackie, for today. Thank you, Jackie Evelyn, for coming through. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Which takes me now to, I think we're doing very well on time. The representatives from ZIDA, I'm not sure if they've managed to log in. We shall be hearing from Ms. Siliwaziso Chizwina, and Teresa, the chief legal officer, is not able to make it today because she's been called urgently to make another presentation elsewhere. So I think Silly should have joined. Jackie, can you confirm that for me? Sorry, not Jackie. Why am I going back to Jackie?
That's okay. Yes, Ms. Chizina has
Karen.
joined. Ms. Chizina has joined. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Nelly. Yes, we are on the call as ZIDA. And good morning to everyone. A good evening or good afternoon to everybody out in Australia.
Thank you, Silly, for joining. I must say we have had the similar presentation from Zida when they came to our own law firm. Thinking that I'm a lawyer and then listening to you guys present, I started to doubt myself a lot, eh? And I realized that Zida has been doing so much, including making the application for an investment license electronic. But I'll leave that to you to give us in your presentation. So Silly is going to speak to us about investment opportunities in Zimbabwe, but I'd love for her to touch briefly on the process of applying for an investor's license. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelly. Let me just share my screen.
Okay, so we're not yet seeing your screen.
Just hold on. Let me just look for. Sorry, Nelly. It's not giving me the option to share the actual presentation.
I think Karen is attending to sorting you out there.
Okay.
Or can you please send it? You'd sent it through, isn't it? Okay, there we go. You're able to share now.
I'm able to share. Okay. So if you can just confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I'm going to walk you through this. Sorry, I just realized that my camera is off. Let me just do that because you might think it's an AI bot speaking to you. So let's correct that. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen and also see my face now. Okay, so it's a very good afternoon and good morning to all who are on the call. Like Nelly said, my name is ZABC WEBINAR, and I'll be presenting on behalf of Zida. Our sincere apologies from our principal legal officer, Teresa, because she's handling an investor who's come in and she needs to take the lead on that. Additionally, I will have to leave the meeting early because I have to go to another initiative and our SADC forum, which is upcoming, and I lead a team that is going to be part of an investment forum there, so I have to leave early. But on the call are three very senior officers who speak to investment promotion, energy, and who will also be able to resolve any issues pertaining to the processes of investment into the country. I think most people on the call will be aware of these stats, our population, which is young and growing, our good weather, which currently is mild, it's winter, but the sun is shining out there, and also the land that we have available for agricultural purposes, and also maybe right now issues to do with carbon trading and green funding. So we have that arable land. And also in terms of accessibility across the entire country, when you look at how you can get from point A to point B, we've measured it to be about 90% accessibility. Additionally, we have opportunities which speak to one of the key sectors that most people on this group are interested in, the energy. So available in terms of overall over the year, about 3,000 hours of sunshine that investors can have access to. So our role as an agency is that we came together, three agencies came together, ZIA, which is Investment Authority, ZIMSEZA, which was a special economic zone regulator, and then a joint venture unit, which was under the Ministry of Finance, which was looking at public-private partnerships to form ZIDA in February of 2020. And since then, we've been running with the mandate, which revolves around us promoting and facilitating investment into these three categories of investment. So our general investment, our public-private partnership, and also our special economic zone investment category. I think a lot of you are aware that in general investments, it really covers any type of investment that you can come and do in the country, where you can have, in most of them, 100% ownership. There are constraints in some of the mining or minerals under the Mining Act, but those can be explained later on. So general investments would cover that, but also under general investments, you will have some gray zoned sectors or subsectors, which list is available from the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, but which we can also avail to you. So these we hold specifically for the people of Zimbabwe. You can, as an investor, apply to the Ministry of Industry and Commerce to actually have access to them. And if they deem it fit or if they see a gap, they will allow you as an investor to take part in that. The public-private partnership is really a collaboration between private investors and the government and public sector institutions. And we, as the agency, go through the proposals on behalf of government, take them to cabinet, and justify or show the benefit to the economy, to the society at large, and also the impact on the environment over the life of the project that is proposed. The special economic zones are really a special category of investment that we as ZEDA regulate, license, and also participate in the development of. And across the country right now, we've closed about 6,000 hectares of public sector land, which is available for investment, covering tourism, manufacturing, just general industrial development. And
Okay,
some
so
focused
sorry
on-
to interject. Your screen seems frozen. I'm just getting messages from the attendees that the screen is frozen. I thought it was just my side only, but it appears as though
apologies, Nelly. Has it frozen in? Okay,
we can't see.
It's not moving.
No, not at all.
Is it
Okay.
moving now?
Now it seems to be. Yes.
Okay. All right. So those are the categories of investment that we have. And through Nelly, I think you will get access to the presentation. So you will have a bit more information on this. One of our greatest offering as ZEDA, or as an investment promotion agency, really is the establishment of a full-on one-stop investment services center. So currently in the center, we have close to 18 representatives, senior level representatives from each of these agencies that we are showing here. I think we also have additionally currently Ministry of Industry and Commerce joining us, but we go from the highest office, which is the Office of the President and Cabinet. We do have a representative sitting with us, D's office, immigration, NASA, ZIMRA. So any inquiry that you have pertaining to additional permits, licensing, our officers in-house will be able to walk you through the process, and in some cases take you to their offices and run with you until you get the relevant permit. Our key selling point is that we've been able to enter into collaboration agreements with each of these agencies, or with most of the agencies, to expedite the process for our investors. So the license fee that you pay comes with a service that we go over and above to make sure that your investment journey is as smooth as possible and that you establish as quickly as possible. At any given time, we have 17 to 23 representatives sitting within ZEDA under the auspices of the chief facilitator. Your licensing journey really is broken up into about 5 sectors. So the pre-licensing and licensing, which is on our digital portal, which you can have access to right now if you log into zedainvest.com. And that is the part where we share all the information for licensing. We also give you the access to the portal, and we onboard you. And after you've paid and you've been given your license, we then make sure that you're established. So through the OSISC department, all your additional permits, they will walk you through that whole process. Once you are a licensed investor in country and working with us or under us as ZEDA, we also have a responsibility to ensure that we take care of you. So that's the role of my department. We are the nice guys who come back and have a chat with you to see that you've established any constraints that you're having, any challenges that you're faced with, any additional opportunities that we identify that you may be able to leverage on or take up. We showcase them to you, and we walk that journey with you. We also have what we call our policing unit. So the monitoring and evaluation unit really is responsible for making sure that you comply with the conditions of your license. If you're out of order, we have the power to take away the license, but their role is just to be able to collect the relevant data and information and make sure that you're within the laws of Zimbabwe and that you're really doing what your license allows you to do. These are the requirements that you will find online. So your application fee of 500. And once the process is done, at the present moment, we can honestly say that if everything is in order, within 72 hours or 5 days, you can have a ZEDA license. Additionally, within that space, if you do not have a company registered in Zimbabwe, within 48 hours as ZEDA, we can assure you of getting a fully registered incorporated company in Zimbabwe. And now we're working with the company registry office, and we're trying to reduce that time because, we can even take it back to about 2 to 3 hours if we work hard with them. So our collaboration agreement is actually allowing us to improve our pace of delivering on the ease of doing business. So most people will ask who should be licensed. So any potential investor who is interested in establishing in the country as quickly as possible and having access to all these offices and agencies as quickly as possible. Also, our act does not discriminate. So we also license local investors because our mandate allows us to promote domestic investment into the country. So that's also very important to note. We also have some unlicensed investors who came in before ZEDA was established. So these can also take on the license. And then we also have specifically investors who are protected under the bilateral or BIPA agreements with Zimbabwe. So the question would obviously be, what is the value of me getting a license or an investor getting a license through ZEDA? We keep track of all your activity in the country and your performance. So we act as a monitoring tool on behalf of the government, but we also provide investor protection under our act, which is available to only our licensed investors. And we have to be very clear about that because we do have investors who come in and do their own operations. And then when they have challenges, they then come up to ZEDA and say, look, can you help me? But our act really specifically protects those who are licensed and who we can track and monitor on a continuous basis. Also, having our license unlocks access to our OSISC service. And like we said, we expedite the process of getting you established in the country. Our advocacy department, which is our legal department, is really one of our selling points to say that when things are not working well and you tell us where they're not working well, where you're having challenges with policy or with regulatory framework, we go to our principals and we highlight where the challenges and the benefits of changing or making changes to those policies, or we proffer a solution to a new policy or an act that may be causing you a problem as an investor. We don't always get positive feedback, or we get it after a long period of time, but that's our role, and we keep it up as long as we can. Your responsibilities as investors in the country to the community in Zimbabwe and to the country at large and to our environment is really compliance with our legislation and obligations to the environment under our act of EMA. And also we have international standards that we comply with, our agreements with our counterparties in other countries or our regional entities. And finally, respect for our national heritage also falls under our act. So the responsibilities of investors investors also have a responsibility to the country that we also track and follow. And our act is very clear about how we should protect investment in the country. You have freedom of investment. Yes, I did say that there's certain sectors or subsectors that have requirements, but you are free to invest in almost all the sectors in the country. We also have a principle of non-discrimination, so we treat all our investors fairly. So local and international will be treated fairly, and we try and make sure that it's equitable treatment. There's a guarantee against expropriation in our act, section 17, if you look at it, and also the transfer of funds. So in-house, we have a Reserve Bank representative who handles issues to do with queries on how banking, anything to do with transfer or movement of profits across the borders. And they're here to make sure that you have all your paperwork in order and that it's expedited. We also look at employment of senior expatriate staff. A lot of our investors want to bring in their expatriate staff. So our immigration representatives here, but we also try and make sure that we ensure there's transfer of skills and technology across the investment portfolio that is brought into the country. So our role is to try and make sure that if you're investing in the country, we also bring value into the country. So there is a limitation to the volume of staff that you bring in, but also we look at it to say, do we have the skill set in Zimbabwe? And if not, how can we transfer those skills over the life of the investment? One of our values is transparency. And I think if you walk into our offices, anybody who's ever been to ZEDA will tell you that all our offices are glass framed. We don't have doors. We do have doors, but they're all glass. You can see into any activity that's happening. So we have transparency across, not just physically, but across all our transactions at ZEDA. So like we said, there's the freedom to invest and fair and equitable treatment, guarantees and transparency, and then obviously the transfer of funds explained there. So the main focus, maybe Nelly, for everybody who's on the call right now, was on mining and energy. Our stats from 2023. Tomorrow we are releasing our annual report. We'll upload it on our website. You'll be able to read what happened over last year across the sectors. But to speak specifically to mining and energy, our mining sector investments, we had about 277 licenses totaling 2 billion, and then energy we had 20 very investors coming in, and that really should reach 3.5 billion. Sorry about that, that's a typo. 3.5 billion coming in on energy, renewable energy. It's a main focus for the country because of the gap that we have. And then in terms of Australian investment statistics currently in the country, in quarter one right now in our report, we had a $300,000 investment into the services sector. For year ending 2023, we had 7 new licenses issued to Australian investors in the mining sector, 1 in the manufacturing sector, and 1 in transport. So we've had a bit of traction there. We're happy to say that we were in Australia in September last year at the Africa Down Under Forum, and a lot of the inquiries that we're getting now for mining and a couple of the licenses came from that particular outreach in Perth. In terms of analysis, and like I did say, we have a couple of experts on the call will be able to answer additionally. The energy industry gap, we've highlighted there, our focused demand and our current power generation, which is largely thermal and hydro, our irradiation levels and our capacity to generate, and then also the resources that we're looking at generating the power, where they are, and how much each of these could potentially provide. Our mining sector, we're all aware that we have close to 60 to 67 minerals in the country, of which 17 of them are economically viable minerals. Also our deposits, most of them are high grade ore. We've had quite a lot of interest in lithium over the last couple of years. And currently, I think the talk is around the gold mineral, because obviously the ZiG, our new currency, is a driving factor and force. But that is, information that we can always share as to what is happening around each particular mineral as we go. The opportunities around the mining sector is that obviously there's exploration opportunities, extraction, and then energy generation for these mining entities. And then also we have opportunities for investment into the road and rail network, because we do need to move the minerals in large volumes, and our rail network needs upgrades. So anybody who's interested in that kind of investment, there is that opportunity. And finally, supply of mining, high quality supply, mining equipment and technology. We've packaged our information into this information pack. You can find it online, but you could also scan the QR code and it'll tell you how what opportunities are available in the general investments and how you can access them. And then also how our public-private partnership works. And then obviously, if you go onto our portal, like Nelly said, you can now log in, get access to a response person who can then give you information, or register on our portal to be able to access our licensing processes and actually get a license while you're sitting comfortably in Australia. And if you scan that, it'll take you to our portal, and then you can actually start the process of registering as a potential investor in Zimbabwe. We've also shared with you over the next 2 templates our 2024 multi-sector projects. I think these ones cover high-value projects across all our sectors. So mining, agriculture, construction, housing, manufacturing opportunities, cannabis as well, medicinal cannabis development as well. So if you scan that, you'll be able to access the opportunities that we can discuss with you and give you access to the information packs for the particular projects. Additionally, I think also of interest, obviously, is the mining prospectus, where we've shared with you available claims, available information on sectors, specific areas of development, the latest information on questions that people are asking about the mining sector and where the regulations and the framework and how you actually go about the process of getting a mining license through the Ministry of Mines. And before I close off, also on our website, you'll be able to access information through a matchmaking platform, which allows you as an investor out there to actually access information on mining claims that are available for investment, and also tourism projects and opportunities in the tourism sector. If you're interested, we can partner you with project promoters who are holding the projects. And this is available on our platform for investors interested in that. So from us as ZEDA, that's a high level information. And like we said, most of the information pertaining to how we operate and what is available as an opportunity is available on our website right now. If you log in, and you'll be able to then send us an email onto our CRM system, which prompts us to get back to you and speak to you within a space of 24 hours. So Nelly from ZEDA, right now, from myself, a special thank you for listening to our presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Silly. I think we were having a bit of a technical challenge there. The screen was frozen, but I've assured everyone here present, I'm hoping my message was also passed on, that we'll share the presentation via email to those who've provided their email addresses. And with your permission, we might just put the link to the site on our own website. Then anyone can just click and go straight to where the document is. But thank you so much. I have a few follow-up questions. So you know how you spoke about the ease of incorporating yourself. Sorry, let me put on my video. Incorporating in Zimbabwe, getting your licenses, permits, etc. I was speaking to someone from Rwanda the other day, and they were showing off about how easy it is. Within a couple of hours, you've got a company, tax clearance, etc. And that's not the experience that we've had in Zimbabwe for quite a while now. So I don't know from your end, how has this improved, and as of when? Since maybe a few of us here are still experiencing similar challenges, especially when it comes to filing of returns, etc. So when did this situation get better? Can I walk in today and at ZEDA and come out with a company within the next couple of days, like by Friday? If I'm looking at my watch, today's Wednesday.
Yeah. Thank you, Nelly. So yes, I can stand on my word and say, try it out. And if you don't have a company registered by Friday, call me. If all your paperwork is in order, Nelly, you know, all the requirements for registering a company are in order, you've got your articles and everything ready on file, and you're able to upload it digitally, then within 48 hours or even less, we can assure you that you will have a company incorporated in the country. So we've moved, Nelly, from when we started as ZEDA in 2020, the average time to actually get a license was about 40 days. And by the time we got to the end of 2022, headed into 2023, we had 21 days. In the space of 365 days, we've moved from 21 days to 7 days as at the end of 2023. When we went live with the portal, we were able to move it in about 2 months from 7 to 5 days. We're looking to reduce the licensing time to maybe 48 hours complete. So that would include the company registration and the ZEDA license, which is a process that we're going through. Our digitalization process is going to take us a bit of time, but we are safely saying as ZEDA, we're a digital company. If you come into our offices right now, I think we're 95% paperless. And we're heading hopefully to 100%. I don't know whether auditors will accept that, but we are looking at a situation where we will be paperless very soon. So we can confirm. We do not do returns. That is not our role. Our role is the registration of the company and the licensing. We can facilitate for you as a licensed investor to go back to the company's office and say, look, an investor requires this done expedited. As indicated, we have collaboration agreements, and we are currently working to get digital connectivity to the company registry office, to ZIMRA, and to NASA. And we are trying to make sure that by the end of the year, we probably have 4 or 5 of the key agencies that make a registration process faster connected to the ZEDA CRM system.
Well, looking forward to that. It will really make life a lot easier. And I like how you put it, if you have your papers in order, because I think that's the challenge with a lot of people coming to invest in Zimbabwe, where we are arguing about what are the correct papers. But yes, again, get professional advice, go to the lawyers. That's what I must say. My other question is, if I have a ZEDA license, do I still need exchange control approval for all the repatriations? Because in the past, the Exchange Control Act says that you must have exchange control approval to hold securities, which includes shares. And when you're doing all your investments into Zimbabwe, make sure you pass again through the exchange control authorities. When you're lending as shareholders, same thing. So if I've got a ZEDA license, do I still need to go through that entire process? Or is it now me having to just comply at the time of making my investment into the country and using the proper channels?
So, Nelly, we don't take over the role of the central bank. The central bank still has its role to play. And anything to do with repatriation, movement of funds, any laws that require you to go through the central bank, you will still have to comply. What our license does is it makes it easier for you. So most of the time, if you are going to the Reserve Bank or central bank to actually say, I would like to repatriate, the key question would be, can you show where the money came in? And in order to show that, you would have a ZEDA license, which shows that you intended to do the following and you did it. And so the Reserve Bank, most of the time, will ask you to submit your ZEDA license. So we don't take over their role. The obligation to go through the process of the central bank still remains with the investor. What we just do is, through our representative here, I don't know whether George is on the call, is to expedite the process and give you answers quickly or connect you to the bank. I'd like to add that as ZEDA, we do have a memorandum of understanding, or an SLA is a service level agreement, where we, with the central bank, particularly with the foreign exchange system, to make sure that this is done quickly and we can answer all investment queries as quickly as possible.
Then my other question is on whether or not having a bilateral agreement assists an investor. We've had many clients complain about their investment being expropriated despite them being a member or from a country where we've got a bilateral agreement with. And my question is directed towards that. Do I still need to have a ZEDA license if we have a bilateral agreement? For example, we've got with South Africa, a bilateral agreement that's standing. So does a person coming from that kind of a jurisdiction, and let's say we have more, do those people need to have ZEDA licenses?
So Nelly, thank you for that. I would have loved Teresa to be on the call to give you additional information, but it's a question that we can answer in more detail and you can share with you and share with the rest of the team. And when ZEDA was formed, I think the initial idea, and it still stands, that all bilateral agreements would be housed under ZEDA and would be taken care of under ZEDA. We still go through the relevant ministries or agencies that hold these agreements, or foreign affairs. But having the ZEDA license does not necessarily take away the responsibilities of the bilateral agreement, but also holding the bilateral agreement doesn't stop you from getting a ZEDA license. What we do is facilitate and make sure that if you have a problem with your investment, we are there to then go and quickly make sure that it's taken care of. So that any specifics to do with any upgrades or changes to the bilateral agreements, I think I would have to ask our legal department to give you a clearer answer on that. I know there's been a lot of work and discussions around the bilateral agreements and making sure that we comply as a country. And so it's part of our investment advocacy processes that our department in legal has been working on with relevant ministries and other regional agencies and international agencies for compliance.
Then my last question. In the past, the licenses that were issued would have to be specific. So if it's a mining project, I'll be required to specify that I'm coming to invest in Zimbabwe in this particular mine, and this is how I'm going to invest. Now, is there a license that's like a general license? And I'm just thinking about general practitioners, general dealer, general investor. Can I have such a license, or can someone from another jurisdiction hold a general investor license? Maybe you just have money and you just want to come and invest it in Zimbabwe without knowing what particular project you want to invest in, but you are desirous of having the ZABC license. So does ZABC have a general license that they issue out?
Thank you, Nelly. Yes, like I said, we've got 3 types of categories of investment. So the general investment license is a general investment license. What we notice is that a lot of the investors will say, I am coming in to do a general investment, but they'll be specific. They might say sector. They might focus on 3 sectors, but the license will tell you where you're looking to invest. And most investors who are coming in, it's not just they're just coming in to analyze what the situation looks like in the country. They already know where they want to go. And so most of the time, it's very easy to say it's a general investment license in, say, mining, energy, and it'll be clearly marked. For those who are very specific, they will actually have a location of the investment on the particular license. So in order for us to be able to monitor and evaluate where you're going to, the requirement would be for you to state what business are you coming to undertake. It's also a protection factor. You just don't want people to come in and do whatever, because also there are issues to do with money laundering that you have to make sure, the country is taken care of. So our licenses speak to a particular business that you're going to try and undertake, or a particular sector that you're going to enter into.
Okay, then there's one question that's come through about transfer of profits from renewable energy projects. Can the government guarantee, or how does one get assurance that if there's a renewable energy project, they're able to transfer their profits? I know you spoke about repatriation, compliance as well with exchange control, but just to respond to this question, may you please clarify on government guarantee regarding transfer of profits from renewable energy projects, is how it's worded.
Maybe it's the wording, but government guarantees are not just given out these days. The government doesn't guarantee. I think we've got Lucy on the call as well, who's our specialist from the Ministry of Energy. And if there's any additional technical information, she might type it into your chat. But just like anybody who's doing business in the country, if all your profits are made properly and can be accounted for, you can repatriate them. They're not specific to say that they are for a particular sector. Maybe the question would be the assurance of payment for generation of the power. Again, the government is working on updating the current energy policy to allow high energy users to be able to transact in the United States dollars or foreign currency. And a large number of independent power producers are actually entering into agreements where they're generating power for specific clientele, and then they're able to transact in United States dollars and then repatriate their profits thereafter. So I'm hoping that is where the question was going to. But in terms of guarantee, no, when you get a government guarantee, it's on a specific project that would also have government participating in those. That is where government guarantees may be given. But these days, it's not, we don't just give them out. I think it takes a lot of work to actually get a government guarantee for that kind of work. So I hope that has answered the question. And like I said, Lucy is on the call if there's any additional technical query referring to energy.
And as you said before, whether it's a private or public arrangement, you must just make sure that when you enter into the arena, you enter with the right credentials and with everything having been done properly and with all your funding coming in properly, so that you can then remit it, whether it's a profit or income generated through the right channels. I think you had responded to that before. Then the last one, sorry, it keeps coming. Is it mandatory to have a ZABC license, and is ZABC the only approved company or organization to provide the same in Zimbabwe? I can answer that. You said it's up to you, but you're better to have a ZABC license, because when you now have any issues and you want enforcement, then that's when you can go to ZABC for all the protections that come from ZABC, including the protections that come under the ZABC Act like the right not to have your investment expropriated. Did I capture it correctly? I recall that was your part of your presentation.
Yeah. So yes, just to reiterate, the current legislation does not make it mandatory. What it does is we are the only agency who issues investment licenses. We are the only national investment promotion agency mandated to promote investment and to provide that particular license and to provide those protections currently in the country. You can choose to walk into the country, but what we have noticed is that a lot of investors come in and they don't know how to get around the system. And by the establishment of the OSISC service, which we're the only agency who has it in the country, has brought together all the problem areas that have been delaying establishment in the country. So that's our service offer right now. And obviously information for us is pulling as much information about investment about the country and putting it into one space where we can share it with you. And we also consider ourselves to be, spearheading access to data about the whole country, provincial information that a lot of people may not have. We're putting it together and putting it onto our website, and you have access to that at any given time. And we go over and above. So sometimes the reinvestment opportunities that are happening in this country, if you look, the highest level of reinvestment is coming through from investors who are licensed at ZEDA because they have access to information that we are giving them. So that's our currently our value proposition, and we're working on growing that.
Well, thank you. That question came from David Tafirenyika. And, like what Scott said at the beginning, people just don't know about what is happening in a jurisdiction. And people don't know that you can actually go to a ZEDA website and get access to all that information. And I now know that you're the only people allowed to issue out such a license. Right. Thank you so much, Sili. Thank you for that presentation. I'm sure we all learned so much. If you have questions that haven't been answered, please do send them through to info@zimausbc.co.zw. We'll answer as many as we can during this chat, but we'll also respond after the chat to anyone who has requested information. Thank you so much. This takes us to exchange control with Miss Charity Tembo. I'm sure she's online. Karen, may you confirm?
Yes, Ms. Tembo is online and she's just switching on now.
All right. Good morning, Deputy Director, Exchange Control of the Reserve Bank. I've been looking forward to having you on this chat so that I can get assistance with exchange control in foreign investment in Zimbabwe. For all our investors that are watching, and even some questions that I may have myself. But thank you for always having your office available to us. We always reach out and we get assisted so well whenever we reach out to the Reserve Bank, your department and other departments as well. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I
there
can.
You are. Hello.
Yes.
How are you
hello,
today?
how are you? Very
I'm
well,
well. You're looking younger.
You should come closer home.
I will. At least there's no more COVID. So at least now we don't have to be chatting on phones. We can see each other face to face. We're coming for tea.
Sure.
Thank you so much for coming through today.
Thank you for having us.
I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone who is on the call. My name is Charity Tembo. I'm with the Exchange Control at the Reserve Bank. Just by way of introduction, this is the arm of the Reserve Bank that deals with foreign exchange flows. So we're talking about inflows, outflows coming out of investment, coming as a result of trade with Zimbabwe. We are the ones that look at the policy and the administration thereof. So we are glad to be on the call. As I share the presentation that I have, just also to highlight that I think much of my work has already been done. Okay, Can you see the presentation, Nelly? Not yet? Okay.
Not yet. Yes, now I can see you are starting to share your screen.
Okay,
Yes, there we go. Perfect.
thank you. So I was just indicating that I think much of my work has already been done. I've had discussions centered around repatriation and remittance of profits, of dividends, and any other income that could arise from investment that would have been made here. So I think it's all good. I will just reiterate on that from a policy perspective and administration perspective. I will talk briefly about the mandates of the Reserve Bank, which I'm sure we're all aware, just like any central bank. And then we'll go straight into the administrative and policy measures that we have as exchange control that support trade and investments. We'll look at the use of multi-currencies and the FCA framework, the foreign currency account framework that we have here in Zimbabwe, the liberalization of the current account, what that it entails, and the capital account arrangements. Here we're now looking at the investments that are made into Zimbabwe, the provisions thereof, and then definitely the remittance of funds as it relates to these investments. And then once one is established here in Zimbabwe, the sources of financing for businesses, and then we'll conclude the presentation. So our key mandate as the central bank, obviously, is to be a credible, transformative, and responsive central bank, which contributes to the development of the country. We're looking at price stability, exchange rate stability, and financial sector stability. This is very key, especially when foreign investors or even local investors are looking at the environment to ensure that the return that one is going to have as a result of an investment is meaningful. One would definitely need to have exchange rate stability, price stability, and obviously financial sector stability. Just moving forward. So like I indicated, these are the policy measures that we'll be talking about and the administrative arrangements that we have in place. So as we are all aware, as Zimbabwe, we are using a multi-currency system where we have our local currency and a number of foreign currencies for both domestic transactions and then the foreign currencies for our international transactions. Our local currency we have recently introduced the Zimbabwe gold to replace the Zimbabwe dollar that we had. Zimbabwe gold, which we short-term ZIG, has been introduced so as to foster simplicity, certainty, and predictability in the monetary and financial affairs. Probably people will then be wondering what exactly are we looking at when we're looking at the Zimbabwe gold. This is a currency that is anchored with a composite basket of foreign currencies and other precious metals, mainly gold, which is held at the Reserve Bank as reserves for this purpose. The main goal, like I indicated previously, is to ensure that we have predictability and certainty. Our aim there is to ensure that when it comes to the Zimbabwe dollar, the volatility that we have witnessed in prior years, that can then be tamed so that we have a stable currency going forward. This is very important for investors because as you are transacting in the country, notwithstanding that you can transact in foreign currencies, but alongside you have the ZIG, for which if one is then to be paid in ZIG, declare the dividends in ZIG or whichever, they are assured of the value preservation that then comes along with the anchoring or with the precious metals and foreign currency. So for all entities that are incorporated in Zimbabwe, they are allowed to open domestic and foreign currency accounts. So a company can open ZIG accounts. They are also equally able to open a foreign currency accounts because we are in a multi-currency system, and this can be done with any bank, and it is not limited to one or two. You can open as many accounts as one needs to with any bank of their choice. Funds that are in these FCAs, the foreign currency accounts, can be used for domestic and international transactions. So in terms of sources of funds that can be deposited into these FCAs, we're looking at investment funds that are coming from offshore, export proceeds, offshore loans, which are part of the investment funds, and paid to the entity proceeds for sale of goods or services. So those are the funds that are eligible for the FCAs, and individuals also equally can open ZIG accounts or foreign currency accounts to deposit their funds for day-to-day use. And non-resident corporates who intend to invest in Zimbabwe but are still to conclude their investments, maybe they're still scouting for investment, maybe they're still in talks with intended partners here, but would wish to open an account here in Zimbabwe. They are also free to do so as a non-resident, and these accounts are called non-resident transferable accounts, which can hold funds prior to registration of the investment, because one can then choose to say, I need to have the funds here in Zimbabwe for ease of transaction. Maybe you then want to pay the fees that are payable at registration, then one can be able to do so. And funds which then sit in the NRTAs are remittable at the request of the holder at any point in time. So these are funds which we know are here for a specific period maybe, or if one then chooses to say, okay, I have identified an investment, then they are free to transfer funds from that account into an ordinary account that they would have opened with a bank once the licenses have been issued. Key to that, just to mention that banks will then apply the normal KYC, know your customer, and customer due diligence in the opening of all these accounts. And moving on to the liberalization of the current accounts, just to mention that in our endeavor to ensure a liberalization of the foreign exchange market, the current account was liberalized in February 2009 to enhance ease of doing business. We're looking at imports and exports of goods and services. So basically, when we're looking at it from a central bank point of view or from an exchange control point of view, we're looking at the transfer of funds or the remittance of funds in pursuit of trade. The transactions are handled by banks, which we term authorized dealers, as they are authorized by exchange control to deal in foreign currency with minimal or no reserve bank approvals which are required. So once a business, an entity has been licensed by ZIDA, they will obviously proceed to open the requisite bank accounts with any bank of their choice. And upon transacting now, they're now operational, they're able to approach their bank. Should they want to import, they're able to approach their bank and issue out an instruction for payment, be it of imports of goods or imports of services, which the bank should be able to implement without any reference to the Reserve Bank. So this will apply mainly to the importation of goods. When it comes to services, there's a prior registration that the bank is supposed to do, and then the subsequent payments in pursuit of those services can then be made without reference to the central bank. The benefits for coming from the liberalization of the current account is the growth in international trade for Zimbabwe, obviously ease of doing business for companies, increased capital flows, and improvement in the quality of goods and services. Definitely, the bank continues to review these policies to make sure that they become more business friendly, and we continuously enhance the ease of doing business, whilst bearing in mind the need, obviously, to adhere to other requirements such as anti-money laundering and counter-financing of terrorism. So just to amplify, on our imports, there are no restrictions in terms of remittances that can be made by an entity should they want to import on the amount that they can import from their foreign currency account or from the interbank. The matters are handled by the banks, sorry, just like I mentioned before. The banks, obviously, in line with international banking, they will require the supporting documents to support that request for importation, which might be probably an invoice, which will have the banking details of where the payment is supposed to be made. And then administratively, also the bank will have to ensure that the imports have actually been done. I talked about importation of services, which I said that it requires a prior registration. So entities will be required to submit the service level agreements with their foreign counterparts to the Reserve Bank via their bank for registration. This is done so that we know the liabilities that are going to ensue from the agreements that they've entered into. And this registration is done prior to contraction of the services. And then on our exports, there is no need for any prior approval from the central bank. What we have are accounting documents or export documentation, which are supposed to be completed by the exporters here in Zimbabwe. And the documentation can be accessed online once they've been registered through their bank, and with us, they can then access that documentation. This is the documentation that an exporter will then present at the port of exit to the customs officials as proof that they are authorized to export whatever goods it is that they have. The documentation are free. They are not charged by the Reserve Bank as part of our efforts also to enhance ease of doing business. And should there be a need for an application for export, this is done within 24 hours. I will give examples of transactions that will require one to submit an application. And these will be, for example, export of samples. So from the mining sector, you find that as they are starting, they might need to export some samples for which they will then need to establish, the value and so forth, the quality. And that is one example of an application that will need to come to the Reserve Bank and that can be done within 24 hours. But the normal exports of goods, of services, those are done at bank level, and the bank just reports to exchange control via the system that we have that links us with banks. And then in the foreign currency account, so the export proceeds are an example, like I mentioned before, of funds that are eligible for deposit in the foreign currency accounts, and there are retention thresholds which apply, which currently stand at 75%, meaning to say the exporter will be able to retain 75% for their own use, and 25% they have to sell to the Reserve Bank in order for us to ensure that we also make available the foreign currency to the market to other non-exporting entities. Then talking about capital account arrangements, my colleague from ZIDA did talk in detail about the requirements for ZIDA licensing, and another question that came from Nelly was whether when one has obtained a license from ZIDA, they'll be required to approach exchange control. So in line with the arrangement that we have with ZIDA, just to buttress on what has been mentioned before, once one has obtained a ZIDA license, for us, that is enough for them to be able to transact in the financial system, to open bank accounts, to be able to move their funds for exchange control purposes. We then also recognize them as bona fide investors. Investments which come to exchange control are the brownfield investments, whereby one may want to acquire securities in an already existing entity. So in terms of those acquisitions, there is need for us to then ensure that we establish the fair value of the securities that are subject to the sale before we can then allow for the investment or the acquisition then to take place. There are no limitations when you're looking at capital markets. On the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, which trades primarily in the local currency, that is the ZiG. And then we also have the Victoria Falls Exchange, which trades in foreign currency. So the difference there is one is based on the local currency, and the other one trades in foreign currency. So in the event that a foreign investor then chooses, say, to invest on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, what it entails is that they will be able to, their dividend is actually declared in foreign currency. The reporting transaction for these particular entities would be in foreign currency, primarily the US dollar. And so the dividends will be payable directly in foreign currency. The difference with the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange is that because it's trading in the local currency, the dividends are declared in local currency, and then there has to be conversion from the interbank to foreign currency so that the funds can be remittable to foreign investors. So once approvals have been granted by ZIDA, ZIDA or exchange control, then foreign investors can inject equity in the form of cash or equipment. And that needs also to be accounted for by ZIDA, obviously, and by ourselves where the funds are moving in cash. So just to clarify that when I'm talking about cash here, I mean funds that are moving through normal banking channels. We still expect the funds to be routed through the bank so that the requisite proof of investment is accessible from the bank in the form of telegraphic transfers. Foreign investors are also permitted to provide shareholder loans to fund their local operations. And these loans will also need to be registered with the central bank so that we know upfront the liabilities that have been contracted by local entities that will then also facilitate repayments of the capital and the interest to the lender. If I can also just mention that once the registration has been done, the repayments will need not be referred to the Reserve Bank for any approval. This will entail an instruction to the bank where one just presents, if it's a loan amortization, and the Exchange Control Authority under which the loan agreement would have been registered so that they can then be able to repatriate the amounts that are outstanding. I thought I would also just need to mention here that we also expect that, and we have, I think, seen a few inquiries which have come from Zimbabweans in the diaspora, also intending to invest back home. And from an exchange control point of view, we are thinking of and aiming to put in place policies that can also attract such investments. What we have seen is that a lot of the diaspora remittances that are coming through are for consumptive purposes, are for support to families and so forth. But we also know that there are a lot of diasporans who are also seeking to invest back home. And I hope that from this webinar and other seminars that have been held, such would be equipped then to and informed to make the investment decisions that needed to be made. Just for information, we received 1.8 billion US dollars in diaspora remittances for the year 2023 as a country, and Australia accounted for 92 million of that 1.8 billion, which shows that there is a potential for such investments to come from the diaspora, and particularly from Australia. We were discussing remittance of capital, dividends, and profits. So just to reiterate that as a country, we do have a capital in, capital out policy. And what we mean by that is, as long as funds have come from offshore, they're eligible for remittance. They represent a liability on our part. So once an investment has been made and profits have been realized or dividends have been realized, these are eligible for remittance offshore. Entities can actually declare 100% dividends from their profits. So if a profit is $100, they can declare $100 in dividends should they wish to do so and not retain anything for their operations. That's the policy that we have in place to say it's up to whichever amount that they choose. There are no limits on the investment amounts that can be made into Zimbabwe. One is free to invest from $1 to, whatever amount that they are comfortable with. And just going back to the issue of profits and dividends, these can be payable from the FCA, from the foreign currency account. So it's an instruction that one then makes to their bank, present their papers, and here the supporting documents I'm talking about are your normal documents that are required for corporate governance purposes, the board resolution, maybe management accounts or audited accounts, whichever the case may be, that and an auditor's certificate, which confirms that the company has made such a profit. And then it's an instruction to the bank, that is if the funds are coming from the FCA, where the entity might not have foreign currency at that time in their own FCA, they can then approach the interbank. Excuse me for the reference to the foreign exchange auction system. It's a system that we had that is no longer in place, and this has been superseded by the interbank as we look to liberalize more the foreign exchange market. So if one does not have funds in their FCA, then they are free to approach the bank from where they can also purchase foreign currency. These investments, also these are 100% remittable from the same sources also, either from the FCAs or from the interbank market. And then just looking at, as I go to conclude, the sources of financing for businesses. So once one is established here in Zimbabwe, the sources of foreign currency could be the retentions that I talked about, or funds which are deposited into the FCAs to meet domestic and international requirements, the interbank market, borrowings from the domestic market, from the local banks. The entity, once it has been licensed and is incorporated here, they are also eligible to borrow even from the local banks for their working capital. And then we've got offshore borrowings, which I also talked about, which require a registration with the central bank. So in conclusion, we strongly believe that we are on the right path to creating a conducive environment for promoting growth of trade and investment in the country. There is commitment of opening up the economy and specifically the foreign exchange market through gradual removal, especially of the capital controls that are still there, in line also with other regional mandates. The measures that are being done in the broader realm, we talked about the currency that has been introduced and the other measures that are also being undertaken at fiscal level, at monetary level. They are all aimed at instilling market confidence and fostering macroeconomic stability, which is key for investment. That is all I have to share with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I have two questions which will need to be responded to quickly. The one being investors, we have set 2030 as the year when the use of the United States dollar might come to an end. So what happens after 2030 for investors that are keen on investing long term? Then the second one is, when investors bring in money into Zimbabwe, they will bring in US dollars, but at times it has to be converted into local currency in order to be used for the operations in Zimbabwe, and they get back local currency. Can that investor acquire local foreign currency to then send back out, maybe for any loans that they have brought in, etc., easily at any exchange that's there? So those are the two questions that I have that are burning and require your quickest response.
Thank you very much, Nelly. So I'll try and kill two birds with one stone, answer both questions from one angle. So like I did mention that we've got a capital in, capital out policy. This policy has been in place for the longest time, just meaning to say that as long as funds have been brought from offshore, those funds are eligible for remittance back to the investor in the form of return or divestment, back to the lenders, offshore lenders and so forth. So this is notwithstanding which currency we are going to be using in the country. If you remember, even when we had the mono currency, when we still had the Zimbabwean currency, if one then invests, what it means is that their funds are still eligible for remittance outside the country because they are a foreign investor. So the funds actually follow them, if I can say it like that. The same would also happen when an investor brings in funds, they then liquidate in order to meet, say, local currency requirements, if they have any. Still at the point that they want to remit their funds, they are eligible to do so. What is required and what is key is that at the point that the funds are brought, there needs to be, if there is a compliance requirement, let that be complied with. If there is need for registration of a loan agreement, let that be made so that the loan repayments are then free. If there is need for a service agreement, a registration, let that also be made so that the subsequent payments can be made freely from the banks. Thank you.
Well, thank you. To be tested post 2030. And please, can we have some incentives for those who are exporting? It feels like you're always punished for being an exporter and having some of your money withheld and converted without, you know, and not, but, you know, it's something that's required. It might not be reducing the amount, but maybe looking into making borrowing cheaper, some type of incentives that can be attached to being an exporter. Low-cost loans, tax exemptions, you know, those type of things to make it more attractive to be an exporter from the country, right? Thank you so much, Mrs. Tembo. Always a pleasure to engage and interact with you and your team. I know I'm fast running out of time, and our next speaker is actually Duncan Harris, who has been given a 5-minute slot to speak to us and give us an overview of African Chamber of Commerce activities. Hello, Duncan, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Nellie. I'm also very conscious of the time and all the things that you need to squeeze in. So let me just say at the very outset, I'm delighted to join with the other speakers to endorse the theme of the webinar, Navigating Trade Between Australia and Zimbabwe. It is most timely because it follows on from the delegation, as you know, that we had from Australia that recently attended the Zimbabwe International Trade Fair just 3 weeks ago in Bulawayo. And the webinar today will provide pathways for further engagement. It in turn provides us at the Australia-Africa Chamber of Commerce with the opportunity to aid and abet these ambitions through our actions and activities. We have 3 basic pillars: advocacy, business intelligence, and advisory. And through these 3 drivers, we look to generate trade and investment. We do so by way of a strong communications arm via our comprehensive website and social media platforms and a regular monthly newsletter. We undertake regular member events to enable relevant contacts and connections to assist business interactions with African countries and by way of sector-specific webinars such as you're having tonight. We promote both inbound and outbound trade missions to enable meaningful face-to-face meetings with counterparties, and in doing so to develop trustful relationships. We've developed an Africa-wide network of key stakeholders across both government and industry to establish on-ground market-facing contacts and connections. And that's most notable with our partnership relationship with the African Union, and in particular the Continental Africa Free Trade Area Secretariat, with whom we work constantly and continuously. We welcome this opportunity to participate in this webinar and have used our extensive databases to actually help you with creating attendances and in turn create the awareness of the business opportunities that's on offer in Zimbabwe. We're confident that events such as this webinar will be a positive and look forward to providing ongoing assistance to the Zimbabwe Australia Business Council. So, Nellie, given that this is somewhat truncated, let me simply say I want to specifically thank not just yourself, but of course the chair of the ZABC, Carolyn Samuel, and indeed Scott Morris, with whom we liaised as well in contributing, however modestly that we may have done this, but we look very much forward to aiding and abetting you going forward. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Duncan. I think you must have been an ABBA fan because I just heard advocacy, business, intelligence, and advisory. And I got ABBA out of that. Thank you so much. And thank you for all the assistance and for just putting out the word about ZABC out there. We really appreciate that. If there's anyone with any specific inquiries that they want, please do share with us on the platform, and we'll forward those definitely to Duncan and his team. Now, this takes me to, I think it's Dennis, who's going to give us a short presentation, a case study of what's been happening in the agriculture sector. Him as a person who has been a Zimbabwe Australia, what can I call him? Entrepreneur or farmer. Yes. Is Dennis on the line? I guess.
Good, Nelly. Yes, I'm here,
Hi,
Nelly.
Dennis.
So with the case study, I was actually coming in with Evans. So for the case study segment, we're going to talk about ZABC, and then what we also do as our case study actually also aligns with.
So you're killing two birds with one stone as well.
We are killing two birds with one stone. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Evans.
Okay. Hello, hi, Nelly. How are you?
I'm good.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Awesome. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let's have a look here. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Evans Mukonza, and I'm based here in Melbourne, Australia. I'm the chairman for Australia Zimbabwe Business Council. And together here, I've also got Dennis Zimba, who's the president of the Australia Zimbabwe Business Council. And I'm just going to just briefly be conscious of time as well. I had a whole presentation, but be conscious of that and just give a bit of a brief of what we do at the Business Council. And then Dennis will also touch base on some of the projects that we've been working on as a diaspora from Australia and Zimbabwe. So the Australia Zimbabwe Business Council pretty much serves as a vital link between the business communities in Australia and Zimbabwe, fostering economic relations and trade and investment between the two nations. Our activities are extremely aligned with ZABC, hence the seamless collaboration today. We perform a lot of networking events where we have like luncheons, seminars, conferences, where the Zimbabwean businesses can connect and share insights, exploring potential collaboration. We also assist with our stakeholders in facilitating trade missions and business matchmaking. We've also got some lawyers within our business council who work on our policy advocacy, which are pretty much aimed at promoting favorable trade and investment policies between the two nations. Our business council was formed in 2015. We had a really big database before the pandemic of close to about 3,500. So we're on a drive at the moment to try and get more people to join our business council. We also provide information and resources for our members, access to any market intelligence that we have, industry reports, any resources to support their business endeavors. And we also work with a couple of training organizations who come and present, who provide some educational programs, like workshops, training sessions, and also tapping into the expertise of people within our networks to provide any business expertise. We do a lot of promotion on bilateral and trade and investment. So our overall primary goal of the AZBC is to promote the bilateral trade investment between the two nations. So I'll pass on to Dennis at the moment, who's just going to touch base on some of the projects that we've been working on. Thank you.
And thank you, Evans. And thank you, Nelly. So my name is Dennis, as Evans did allude to. So I'm going to touch on a bit of just a bit of background on the Zimbabwean diaspora in Australia. The key things I want to highlight of the significant potential of the Zimbabwean diaspora in Australia is, as Scott did allude to, the approximately more than 40,000 Zimbabweans living in Australia. It's a pool of skilled professionals who can drive investment and economic growth in Zimbabwe. And looking at the statistics from the 2022 census, over 61% have got educational qualification of a degree and above, and then more than 37% are professionals, which includes top agricultural researchers, mining and engineering professionals. And then also, as alluded to from the Reserve Bank speech, Zimbabweans diaspora in Australia do remit more than $92 million in diaspora remittance per year. Looking at the Australian Zimbabwean diasporas in Australia, this obviously then becomes a talent pool. It's actually a gold mine for investment opportunities in Zimbabwe. They have the knowledge, they have the skills, the expertise to identify and capitalize on investment opportunities in various sectors, including mining, agriculture, and engineering. But then that said, also the diaspora has also been doing great work in Zimbabwe. And for example, we do have the diaspora that have got charities in Zimbabwe. There's charities like Friends of Kaungwe, which supports a rural school in Muzarabani. Recently, they've built a library, provided solar. They provide scholarship for more than 400 children. And then we also got another charity called Aussie Books for Zim that have also constructed more than 15 libraries, and then also provided more than 40,000 books. And then lately, they've also been providing lanterns. Right? And then also, we also do have some ladies within Zimbabwe that work in the healthcare sector that have been sending goods and services to Zimbabwe, like hospital equipment and so forth. Right? But as like I said, as the Reserve Bank also said, most of the money that's actually going to Zimbabwe is more for charity work, right? Number one. Number two, some of it is for consumptive purposes. Looking at it from a broader perspective, it's actually not sustainable, because how often can you just keep on giving charities? And then I can also give an example for Friends of Kaungwe, where we provide scholarships. Last year, one of the best performing students in the province was actually on a scholarship from the Friends of Kaungwe project. Right? But then you look at those kids, the potential, you provide scholarship until they're Form 4, then you think, what are they going to do? What are the opportunities? Right? And then you take a step back and think, okay, obviously they don't have enough qualifications, we don't have enough funding to go to uni. So what we then did was, from all these things, what we proposed to do was to take all this, this engagement to the next level by what we're going to do, sort of like creating what we call anchor farms. Right? And for example, this involves partnering with Zimbabwe Agricultural College. The basis of this is, when you look at most diaspora initiatives, they're done in different locations. But then if you bring it together, you can actually then be able to build an economy led by the diaspora. You can actually see the difference of what's actually happening. And then through these ones, lately we've signed an agreement with Zimbabwe Agricultural College. And what AZBC through Aussie Zim is proposing is to use Zimbabwe Agricultural College as a landing pad for Australian products and companies such as seed houses, irrigation, consultants, crop and animal research. Develop Shamba Town into a horticulture hub, leveraging its similar climate to Queensland and Australia. Work with everyone that is presented here on this platform to achieve this. By meaning everyone that is presented here, I look at myself, for example, which is autism, we tried to get into horticulture, right? Initially, what happened is we tried to apply for land, but then we couldn't get land. And then we then advised that we need then to actually go into a joint venture. But then, as you understand, when you go to joint ventures with partners, the perspectives are different, different interests. And then it also becomes hard to juggle. So what we then proposing was, how then do we actually address some of these issues, some of this risk? That's where, when we then looked at by actually coming together and then creating an investment vehicle that would be able, where Zimbabweans diaspora can actually invest through. And then, for example, take advantage of Zimtrade. I think Zimtrade, they do have seminars and webinars where they go to Dubai. They're talking about the horticulture produce that they've been sending to Dubai, markets in Rwanda, markets in Ghana. But then being able to utilize Australian products, seeds, and working with ZIDA and Zimtrade, we'll be able to identify markets for the horticulture produce that would be growing in Shamva. This horticulture produce also empowers the students. Like Scott was saying, Australia is big on education, as importing international students. But then what we are proposing in this instance is more for creating a brighter future for the kids in Shamva. How we're going to do this is, as the investment vehicle, we're going to develop Shamva into an horticulture hub. Right? And then we're going to do partnerships with local universities in Australia, where we are offering a university-led qualification that's actually recognized worldwide and also in Australia. And then on top of that, we're also working with partners to ensure that we've got students that have graduated from Shamva to come to Australia on an attachment so they can actually get quality work experience. And then they'll be able to go back to Zimbabwe and actually assist in the developing to be able to supply good quality products to the international markets that Zimtrade has been identifying in the national markets. The other thing also that we've also been keen on after the Shamva, which is what we're working on, is the good thing about Zimbabwe, we've got 5 regions in Zimbabwe for agriculture. So in Shamva, because the climate is similar to Queensland in Australia, where most of the horticulture produce come from, we're proposing horticulture in Shamva. That will also involve working with Friends of Kaungwe, the charities, the ladies that build hospitals. And then we actually develop Shamva into a town, an horticulture-led town. And then we're also looking at other areas, for example, in Region 5, where we talk about Beitbridge, where we're looking at obtaining land from the government, and then work with ZIDA, Reserve Bank, so that our capital is protected, identify opportunities where we actually then provide research through Gloucester, like I think Zida was talking about the previous delegation that came to Zimbabwe. And then through Gloucester, what we can then do is then to tap into the markets. I believe we look at Dubai, they're looking at more than 800,000 tons of mutton, right? So and then we then also then look into other areas where we look into tourism, where you look at Kanyemba and Binga. But then to do this, like the one thing that we've actually learned over the time is going in alone is too risky. And then the other thing is never actually listen to someone who says, talk to someone who knows someone. That's the reason why we've got we actually got this panel so that we're able to actually ask all the questions. For example, now actually I can talk to the Reserve Bank to actually say, Reserve Bank, how do I make sure that our remittances actually come back to Australia? I also understand the Department of Foreign Affairs is currently working on a diaspora policy. And then as well as reading that Reserve Bank the Reserve Bank presentation, most of it touches on high net worth individuals, people who are looking to list, people with high capital, right? But then you've got Zimbabwe, and some of us, we send money through World Remit. So it's more like then for investment opportunities. Like how do we actually then, get our funds outside of Zimbabwe and then return on investment? And then overall, so in short, what we are trying to do is to create anchor farms, mining, and everything else in between to actually utilize the professionals we have in Australia. We can talk of mining. Majority of the time you meet someone in mining, they talk to say, Dennis, there's so much opportunity in Zimbabwe, but we've got so much skepticism. Right? They'll come over, it's because of what they've actually heard. And then sometimes when you do send trade missions, we do not clearly articulate, or there's not enough time to actually engage. It's like you understand with mining in Australia, most of the times you've got the junior explorers, right? The explorers go first. They explore, and then they identify what resources is actually there. Once they've explored, then the venture capitalists come in because they've actually found the resource, right? The venture capitalist is actually the one that's capitalized to actually quantify the resource. And then from then on, then you've got the shareholders. Right? Like Zimtrade was saying, at the moment, they do not have any resources. Yep. Evans?
Oh, yes, sorry. Continue.
That's all right.
Sorry, I was going to interject because I'm now feeling like we're having the discussion that we are supposed to have as the two councils, on this platform. And I'm loving where it's going, and just being mindful of the time. I'm just gonna ask you to, give us like the a summation of what you have left to us, but I do see that we need to have another webinar which is sector specific, and that speaks to the different areas that the Australian diaspora may be interested in when it comes to investing in Zimbabwe. So I'm sorry to have to do this to you and ask you to.
That is okay. Like I said, sometimes we sort of like get passionate about Zimbabwe, like most of the
Yes, I
Zimbabwean
know,
diaspora is in Australia. And then
Mm.
also most of our projects that we also do, it's more like, so in short, what we are trying to do is from the experience that's learned as a diaspora, from the case study, whereby we did try to invest in Zimbabwe. We have experienced hardships, obviously, but then we then identified other opportunities to say, how do you reduce the skepticism? And then through that, what we're trying to do now through ZABC, from the feedback that we have received, we're creating like anchor farms projects whereby the Zimbabwean diaspora can come to us, and then we utilize these platforms through ZABC, and then engage with people like the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, people like ZIDA, people like Austrade, so that at least when the Zimbabwean diaspora is investing, they know what they're putting money into, and then they know who to talk to. For example, so in short, what we are trying to do is to replace talking to someone who knows someone, right? It's more like what we are trying to do is from the case studies of everything that we have learned, it's more like how do you identify the right people to talk to? That's the sort of
So
what
do you
we're
have a
looking at.
website that someone can visit to get more on AZBC and the work that they've done in Zimbabwe?
Yes, we do. So the website is azbc.org.au.
All right.
So
So thank you so
AZBC,
much. And I'm really alive to the work you've done in Muzarabani. We'll post the website azbc.org.au in the chat, and also we'll share this to others that are watching. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dennis. Thank you so much, Evans, and good to see you again. We are now going to, unfortunately, we're not able to get the representatives we'd hoped to get from the ZTA, and the minister as well fails to join on time because he's presently engaged in another meeting, which takes us to the brief question and answer. If there's anything that we've left out, let me just check here, but I believe we've been answering the questions as we were going along. And unless if there's anything burning from any one of the panelists, I believe that this takes us to almost the end of our program. We'll have our closing remarks from our chairperson, Caroline A. Samuel, the chair. But before she comes, yes.
Sorry, Tawanda is online from ZTA.
Oh, yes, thank you. Tawanda from ZTA. Please do go ahead and make your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Tawanda, how are you? Oh, you've been online the whole time. My apologies.
Yeah, I was actually wondering. Someone says you've been failed to be found when you are online. We are listening.
No, you've been there since
Nevertheless, thank you very much. I'm Tawanda Mnamba. Ordinarily, I'm from Zimbabwe Tourism Authority, but also the tourism secondary at ZIDA. I guess Silvers spoke about one-stop investment services center. So basically, that's where I'm also seated. So I'll quickly share my screen just to confirm that I'm here. And just confirm that you are seeing my screen.
Yes, we are, Tawanda.
Okay. All right. I'll quickly move on to, so I'll talk about the tourism outlook, the destination historical performance, investment opportunities, and the incentives that are applicable or available. So in general, like I had, is it Dennis who was talking? Of course, you mentioned about tourism. Like anywhere in the world, it is one of the fastest growing sector emerging from the COVID, that is. And in terms of Zimbabwe, it has been identified as one of the key economic pillars on the NTS1. Like anywhere else, it is an export sector, ranked third in terms of foreign currency earner, and normally regarded as a low-hanging fruit. And we aim to achieve a 5 billion tourism economy by 2025. So on top, just to highlight the tourism industry in Zimbabwe, which is quite diverse, from travel planning, transport, local travel, accommodation, site visits, and of course, activities. Then in terms of the Zimbabwean destination, tourism is viewed, arranged, or approached in different clusters. That is nature and wildlife, culture and heritage tourism, mines tourism, leisure, visiting friends and relatives, rural tourism, religious, medical, sports, and the like. And also to look at the destination, Zimbabwe in this position, we have got our own 7 wonders of the world, borrowing from the 7 wonders of the world. We value much our people, our history, our Great Zimbabwe, Victoria Falls, wildlife, the Eastern Islands, the Kariba, and the Might Zambezi. Then just to quickly look at the historical performance of tourism from 1980, probably up to 1999, tourism has been geometrically improving or increasing, and we've got that turbulence that happened between 1999 to 2012. And then we get to 2012, we experienced some improvements, the recovery until 2018, and slightly fell to 2019, and COVID came in, and you can see the rest is history. And from 2021, we are picking up to 2023. Then just to look at in terms of 2022, 2023, arrivals, we have just peaked to 1.6 million, and they are coming from those different regions. Of course, Africa with the highest percentage increase. Then specifically, I picked arrivals. I just looked at the past 5 years to look at the Australian visitors. You find that from 2017 or years before, arrivals were increasing until to 2020, up to 2018. It follows the same trend which I talked about. They fell in 2019, and of course, COVID came in, and you see, and we are on a recovery in terms of arrivals from Australia. Then those are some of the indicators that are in place. The average room occupants, which is also on an increase, your investment, and as well as domestic trips. So I also then tried to look at the historical performance in terms of investments in 2022, then 2023 going so. So you find in 2022, we recovered from 142 to 312 million, which was about 120% increase. However, in 2023, investment fell by 27%. The reasons may differ, but one probably may want to cite that there were elections, and there was a wait and see approach. So I further analyzed to look in terms of 2022, where do people invested? Mostly to restaurants, motor vehicles, visitor activities, hostels, lodges, and so forth. So restaurants accounted for almost 50% of the 312 million investment. Going straight to where do we invest? Where are we looking for investments? Generally, it's across the 5 A's of tourism, the attractions, accessibility, accommodation, activities, and amenities. But to go straight into high impact, where we are really looking for investments, we are looking for investment in terms of multi-purpose convention or conferencing or exhibition facilities, specifically in Victoria Falls and Harare. And we hope if we get investment in these facilities, in these areas, everything else will fall in place through a multiplier effect, be it accommodation, restaurants, and the like. And this is probably supported by the drive for Zimbabwe as a business destination through Meet in Zimbabwe. So I just looked at some statistics or figures to support the idea of investment in conferencing facilities. To say on average, we host about 300 meetings per year, and our annual earnings from the meetings is plus or minus 45 million, and international arrivals for MICE business is around 63,000. So a comment just to say Zimbabwe is evolving as a business destination. And of course, it has hosted a number of international, regional conferences. And some of those conferences include the UN WTO General Assembly 2013, conference ICASA in 2015, 2023, UN Wildlife Summit 2019, UNECA 2020, Transform Africa 2023, and so forth. And this year, we are actually looking forward to host the UN Gastronomy Conference, and of course, there is the 44th SADC session, which is coming in August. Still on the conferencing, just to look at some numbers in terms of the current capacity, you find across the whole country or by region, by the way our tourism is arranged in regions, you would find Victoria Falls and Harare peak. Of course, Harare got a total capacity of 10,480, and Victoria Falls is sitting at 2,827. Yet, most of these international conferences would want to have a place in Victoria Falls, and that capacity is really way below the demand. And someone commented to say maybe generally in Zimbabwe, there is not yet a conference facility of this century. We are still relying on HICC, that's Harare International Conference Center, and it still needs some upgrade. And then to also move on to look at some figures in terms of accommodation, we are sitting on a total room capacity of 9,000 plus, with a bed capacity of 17,000. And basing on the projection from the tourism master plans and other strategic documents, we actually have got a deficit of plus 7,000 by 2025. Then moving on to some specific opportunities, you find there is an upcoming tourism city, better known as Masue, just 10 kilometers from Victoria Falls City. And that's the layout, which is, I think, which has already been approved by now. And Masue is a special economic zone, which lies between Victoria Falls International Airport and Victoria Falls City along Blair Road. So you are just in the middle of the city and the airport. And this new city presents vast tourism investment opportunities. And as we speak, a cricket pitch is already shaping up and will play host to the ICC qualifiers in 2026 and 2027, which we are co-hosting with Namibia and South Africa. Land available, to be specific, in that area. You've got your hotels with that land extent, hotel, school, medical resorts, multi-purpose center, arts, villas, holiday homes, and so forth. It's available for that. Then also to look at, in terms of approach, we are also going the sustainable way, and we are working this under Green Tourism Program. And as we speak, we've got 16 hotels in Victoria Falls and Lwange, which were successfully accredited under the program by an independent partner, which we call the Green Tourism Business, based in the UK. And all new facilities are now obliged to observe green tourism practices. And investment in these areas, we are looking in terms of alternative energy, knowing that tourism is known to consume a lot of energy. We definitely need alternative energy, waste management technology, and on the same token, tourism is also known to generate a lot of waste. We go to transportation, there's a lot of movement, which needs sustainability approach and some auto-mechanized system in that regard. Opportunities, like I mentioned earlier on, in terms of sports tourism, medical tourism. One problem you may want to note that Zimbabwe spends about 400 million per annum on outbound medical tourism, money which can be spent in inland if we've got those facilities. So these are the opportunities. One may want to look in terms of community development, to partner with communities under community-based tourism enterprises and bring the communities into the tourism value chain, whether in terms of vegetables, in terms of activities, the list is endless. I would also want to mention that I know Silly talked about the tourism matchmaking, where if you're a promoter, you can also log on your project, or if you're an investor, you can log on your requests and it will matchmake you. And so we have got that link which we can utilize. In terms of incentives, we have quite a number from the various SIs that are available, but it pertains to capital goods, safari vehicles, and of course, I've already talked about the Victoria Falls as a special economic zone, specifically Masuwe special economic zone, where there are quite a number of incentives that we can enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that takes me to the end of my presentation. If we had time, I would have left you seeing a video, but for now, I thank you.
Thank you so much, Tawanda. I just have one question. What does MICE stand for? Because I just thought of white mice when I saw that.
So MICE stands for meetings, incentives, conferences, exhibition, or events. In summary, or it's called business tourism. This is a segment of the people who are coming specifically to convene a conference or a meeting, who are on an incentive program, who are doing exhibition. For example, your Zimbabwe International Trade Fair is one of such. Your UN General Assembly is one of such. People there are going for business, and it is one of the biggest driving force for tourism in many destinations, including USA. So you find with most of these HQs, like your UN and so forth, there are so many conferences of this nature.
So I've learned about MICE and 5 A's. Thank you so much for that, Tawanda.
Welcome.
And thank you to everyone who participated and to those who were with us from the beginning right to the end. And, we are not expecting the numbers that we got today. And I'm really appreciative of everyone who took the time to just be on this platform today. I will hand over to our chair, Carolyn Samuel, Antonio Samuel. We've answered all the questions as we're going along. I wanted to try and keep it as interactive as possible. And I'm so grateful for everyone who took the time to put their questions. And for those questions that we're going to respond to by email, you will get your responses if you hadn't already gotten them whilst we were going through this session today. So over to you, Ms. Samuel. And thank you to everyone for such a vibrant discussion and sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelly. Okay, let me try and switch on my video. Can you see me? Okay, Nelly.
Not yet, but
Not
we
yet.
can hear you.
Okay. How
Oh, there
about
we
now?
go. Hi. Yes.
Oh, well, I can't see anything, but all right. Good afternoon, everyone, and good evening to the people that are in Australia. Caroline Antonio Samuel. I'm the chair for Zimbabwe Australia Business Council, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our webinar today. And as we conclude the session today, I'd like to reflect on the key takeaways and the commitments that we've made as ZABC. So we'll establish a dedicated task force to facilitate and streamline trade processes between Zimbabwe and Australia, ensuring seamless communication and cooperation. We'll also organize networking events, business matchmaking opportunities for companies from both countries, providing platforms for connections and partnerships. We'll also continue to provide ongoing support for businesses looking to expand their operations in Zimbabwe and in Australia. And in closing, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. And I'm thrilled to announce that in September, we'll have a delegation going to Australia. We'll keep you updated on the delegation details. So please keep watching our social media pages, and also keep checking your emails. So the Zimbabwe Australia Business Council remains dedicated to supporting businesses and fostering economic growth in both nations. So I urge you all to continue engaging with us, sharing your ideas and collaborating with each other. Your commitment and engagement are crucial to achieving our goals and creating opportunities for mutual benefits. So thank you once again, and I wish you all a wonderful day. Back to you, Nelly.
Well, thank you, everyone, and have a good remainder of the day. Have a good evening in Australia. For those who want to send questions and who want to visit our website, please just Google ZABC and you'll find us, and send your questions to info@zabc. Thank you so much and have a good day. Bye.